Creativity has been a fundamental cognitive process involved in problem solving and communication. But what is it that makes us pick up a tool like a pencil and mark a piece of paper with a drawing? Are we just marking our existence in a time and place? There are a few ways to look at creativity. We can look at it in a reductionist way, where very few people and very few activities would be considered creative. In this view, only physical works like a painting or sculpture are creative, or a few intangible works like a song, and only eminent geniuses would be considered creative, like Da Vinci or Van Gogh, Einstein or Stephen Hawking. Or we can look at creativity in an expansive way, where almost everything anyone does could be considered creative. Whenever we speak, think, or act, we're being creative. To explore creativity, I came up with 8 questions that I asked a wide range of people, from creativity researchers and psychologists to creatives from all walks of life. Visual artists, musicians, cooks, comedians, and filmmakers. So what is creativity?
Creativity is a connection to something greater than ourselves. I feel like when we talk about creativity, what we're really talking about is bringing something into existence that did not exist before. So we often describe creativity as the idea of taking existing materials and reshaping or reformatting those into something new, which certainly involves creativity if there is a new final product. However, the idea of creativity it's akin to the ancient concept of magic, because it is taking and creating something out of nothing. It's like the old sleight of hand piece where now you see it, now you don't, is put in reverse, where now you don't, now you see it. And that is, in my mind, what artists accomplish with creativity, is literally bringing something into the universe that did not exist before. Well, that's one way that we describe our deities, our gods. So in a sense, it brings artists in relationship with the transcendent, with deities, with that which is larger than ourselves.
That's great. I was waiting for somebody to ding on that. So you kind of touched on it already just now, but maybe if I ask the question, where does creativity come from? Do you think there's anything to add there?
Yeah, I do.
I actually have a quote.
Okay.
Too. So I guess he's a musician, a guy named Paul Zolo. He wrote a book, Songwriters on Songwriting, where he interviews Tom Petty and Bob Dylan and stuff. But Pete Seeger said that many people who are poets and songwriters write stuff while they're sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you want to think about that in terms of your answer.
Yeah.
Where does creativity come from?
Yeah. There's this mystic connection between the creative and the physical world. And sometimes we describe that liminal space that exists between the creative and the physical world as being dreams or fantasies or art. Art somehow exists in that space between what we imagine and what we actually see. Perhaps there's no better example of this than music, because music has some sort of draw and power that we're not fully able to explain. And of course, music has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And when we began to add words to music, these troubadours, these creators that tried to give language to this experience people were having when they were feeling these tones go into their body and through their ears, well, it expanded that idea a great deal. And it's really the combination of poetry and music that we have in our modern songwriting experiences. We're combining two art forms that already existed to create something that did not exist. So when we look at the music of Bob Dylan or the Grateful Dead or any artist that causes us to feel something larger and more expansive than ourselves, in my opinion, we're experiencing a connection with the divine. We're experiencing the creative act that connects us to something we don't fully have language for and can't fully explain. And what better magic in the world is there than that?
I'm not going to put what I'm about to say in, but
sure.
that reminds me of two things. One is, the high school I work at, I'm friends with the music teacher, and he always talks about, like, I hate math.
Yeah.
But he's like, you do live, but I love music.
Yeah.
He's like, music is what math sounds like.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's one piece.
Yeah.
And the second piece, what you said, just with vibrations and stuff, I like string theory.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's almost like...
I like string theory too.
Like we sense something from the music because it's
Yeah.
aware of vibrations, and that is another vibration. And
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Anyway. Let's see. Should I give you a Picasso quote or not? I'll do it anyway. Pablo Picasso said, quote, "The artist is a receptacle for emotions that come from all over the place. From the sky, from the earth, from a scrap of paper, from a passing shape, from a spider's web." End quote. What is, like, thoughts on that, feelings? I mean, it kind of goes along with what you've been saying.
Yeah. The job of the artist is, in a sense, to make us feel something. There are many technicians that can take and put words together. There are many technicians that can take and put vibrations together to create certain types of melodic structure. But an artist does something beyond that. There's been a number of great thinkers that describe art as 1 + 1 = 3. Because there's something that happens in the creation of art where something new is brought into being, and we experience something that is larger than the sum of the parts that went into it. When we look at what physically makes art, pigments in paint, the crafting of these odd symbols that we call letters into meaning and structure, it's really these simple tools that we're using to create something that causes human beings to have an experience where they feel certain emotions. And that's what artists do. They cause us to feel emotions. There are a number of artists out there that have created work that it doesn't necessarily resonate with me. It doesn't necessarily make me feel anything. But if one person feels something and is affected by what that person did, they're an artist. Just because that person doesn't have a massive following of people, or they have not been able to collect a critical mass and turn that into some sort of commercial experience, it does not make that person an artist to have many followers or money. Yeah, most of our great artists died broke. They weren't able to commercially turn this into some sort of product. We get into a really interesting conversation when we talk about the commodification of the creative process and the commercialization of art. But at its purest form, art has nothing to do with those things. If only one person is impacted and feels something emotionally, it's art.
Totally. Do the rhythms and cycles of artistic expression have anything to do with the cycles of the natural world? Night and day, the seasons, life and death, right?
Absolutely. The cycles that human beings have experienced in nature since the beginning of the human experience in many ways mirror the creative process. In many ways, the movements of the moon, the movements of the stars, the experience that we have of night and day as our earth rotates and we and in turn rotate around the sun. These experiences in many ways mirror the creative process. We go from light to dark. We go from death to life. We go from what does not exist to what exists. And that is creativity.
What's the difference between creativity and inspiration? Are they similar or are they different in your mind? Creativity, inspiration.
Creativity is different from inspiration. And here's how, in my mind, I differentiate those things. Inspiration often is the experience an artist has that causes them to create. Many times, the inspiration that an artist has or experiences, it can become arrested within that artist. It's only when that experience is somehow able to be transformed as it comes back out of the artist, through their eyes, through their mouth, through their hands, through whatever they create. It's only then that inspiration takes form and takes flight. But many times artists are deeply inspired by common things or by other works of art. And it's really what happens with that inspiration that either produces creativity or does not. Now, I speak of these things as though we could take out a ruler and easily measure these ideas. Of course, that's not the case. We're speaking about ideas larger than ourselves. We're not able to apply all of the measurements and analytics we use in looking at the natural world to these transcendent, sometimes esoteric ideas. But that doesn't make them any less real just because we're unable to measure them.
Why do we create?
Human beings create because we do not have a choice. If we want to continue to exist, we have to propagate our species on this planet. We have to create if we want to take one more breath. We have to take the oxygen that comes into our lungs, and we have to create the materials within the body that will sustain it. If we stop creating, we die. It is essential that we create not only on a sustaining level, but that also we take that creative power and we propagate that into something that is enjoyable for ourselves. If creation was just a means of existence, I think the human race might have died out many thousands of years ago. But our species has continued to advance because there is something enjoyable in the creative process that we experience that causes us to return to it again and again and experience that cycle of creativity over and over. And many of us who have felt a calling to art, there's no greater experience we have than creating. It brings an experience into our bodies and into our psyches that cause us to almost act like drug addicts because we just can't get enough. We have to have more.
Nice. That actually leads into a question that's not on here. I keep forgetting to bring up.
Yeah.
Before we get to the future, is there a dark side to creativity? Like you just talked, being almost like an addict.
Yeah.
So is there a dark side to creativity?
Yeah. There is a dark side to creativity. I think about the numerous ancient tales that have expressed caution and warnings to us about the dangers of creativity. Certainly it's not the first narrative to explore this, but Mary Shelley's Frankenstein immediately comes to mind. The idea of feeling like we can own the creative experience, that we can somehow capture it like a live bird in our palms, it can become destructive. I like to think of creativity in terms of the tools sometimes that I use to create. And, a hammer can be used to construct a building like this one we're setting in, but it can also be used to tear this building down. It's not so much that the hammer is good or evil or dark or light, but it's a powerful tool. In the same way that creativity is a powerful tool. We create these things, we invent these things that have the power to heighten our experience or to destroy us. Maybe the oldest, most ancient example of this is fire. When human beings first were able to take a rock and a flint and create a spark, and where fire wasn't just occurring because lightning struck something or some sort of natural phenomenon created a fire, but when human beings were able to actually craft fire, when they were able to control and possess fire, fire took on a whole new danger for the human experience. And we both live in a state that has seen a great deal of destructive fire, but we also daily enjoy the fruits of fire. I love a good hot meal because fire can cook that meal, and there's no meal I like better than going in my backyard and turning on the grill and having fire actually cook that food. Fire is like creativity. It can create something that is beautiful and that is just an experience to the taste buds, but it also can burn this entire city to the ground.
And I may not have this in, but that's regenerative too, right?
Yeah.
You need to destroy the old thing so that new thing can grow.
That's right.
Things can grow.
That's right.
So here's our final question here.
Okay.
So, how do you see creativity helping us in the future? And by all means, do a hard bent on virtual reality, because that's your forte.
Sounds good. Our future will only be a product of our creativity. We right now are setting on the precipice of perhaps the most creative experiences that the human animal has ever offered, because it's right now, it's in this moment. And creativity does not seem to operate like other historical phenomena that are on a pendulum. We don't seem to get more creative and then less creative that often. There may be slight swings in the pendulum, but for the most part, creativity advances forward. We keep innovating. We keep figuring out ways to make our lives better and make the human experience better. Right now, I have involved myself in a number of future technologies to try and see what human beings could do with their creativity. Now, I think it's important to tell you why I became involved with these technologies at all, because it gets back to this idea of creativity. A few years ago, I went into a restaurant to meet a friend in West Hollywood, and I was sitting there waiting for my friend to arrive, and I looked out into the restaurant and I noticed that every human being was on a phone. Even human beings that were sitting at tables together with each other were on their phones. And immediately my mind went back to 50, 60, 75 years ago, when the earliest ideas for what microchips could do began to arise. And I thought about those scientists and those creators that were developing those microchips all those years ago, if they had any idea that what they were creating would lead to this massive shift in human communication, and that people would actually sit across from each other and stop talking to one another as a result of this thing that they were creating. Well, I was really struck by that idea, and I began to ask myself, what technologies are brand new right now that people are beginning to create with and experiment with, that 50 years from now someone will look back and say, wow, I wonder if there was anyone in the space of that creation that were asking questions about the technology. Will this technology make us more human, or will this technology make us less human? Because a great deal of the technology that we have has made our lives more convenient. I don't know that in every case it's made our lives better. I'm interested in seeing the creative process and the creative act make us more human, make our lives better, and make everyone's life better, not just the lives of a few better. One of the things that a few years ago began to arise in the public consciousness that was a new tool was virtual reality. I became intrigued by virtual reality because at heart I'm a storyteller. My work is in storytelling. And for visual storytellers that use moving images like myself, for the past 125 years, we basically have been telling stories encapsulated in a frame. And by nature of this type of creation, we've been saying that whatever is inside the frame is important. But whatever is outside the frame, don't worry about. I, as the creator, will tell you what is important by placing it within the frame. With virtual reality, a new experience has been created where we've removed the frame and allow the viewer, the audience, the person experiencing the creative act, to look around anywhere that they like, to go anywhere that they like. We've removed that frame that has created a mediated experience for the audience, and we've tried to remove as much mediation as possible. The possibilities for virtual reality are quite exciting to me because I believe we will move beyond this idea of this heavy brick that sets on people's faces, and I think, along with many other creators that work in the virtual reality space, we'll get to a point that we cease to even call it virtual reality because the experience will become so transparent to our own. We're seeing this through the different AI developments that are happening in augmented reality, and I've become absolutely fascinated with the idea, the concept of the metaverse. And the metaverse is, in many senses, I believe, where our technology is carrying us. This will, of course, create all new experiences for creators to create and tell stories, but just like fire, it has the potential to bring our entire existence to the ground. I want to be one of those creators, assuring that doesn't happen and assuring a better future and a better tomorrow for humans. Excellent.
Telepathy is real, and I can feel you in my bones. Your thoughts are in the air, and they're landing in my mouth, converging from all directions. lines of